very big welcome to you. This is the My Slice of Life podcast, where we find the joy in the little things and the extraordinary. I'm Sharon O'Neill, your very own Highland host, and I am delighted to have you with me this week. We're hurtling towards the end of the season, and that also means big changes are coming, but we aren't quite there yet, as I have a cracker of a plant for us to look at this week. But as usual, just before we dive in, this is your friendly reminder to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. And as always, the links in the description will take you to all sorts of wonderful and magical places, like my blog, the main YouTube channel, and my Buy Me a Coffee page. Feel free to use these links and find out what else I have put out into the interweb zones. There is a lot of work there actually, so I'd love to see you come and say hello in these other places too. Oh, and I've got something new for you as well. I've set up a Discord channel where we can chat about all sorts of things. It's not just for the young ones. I'm determined we're going to have our space. There's a board for general chit chat, there's one for gardening, one for spooky stuff, and I've also put one in for all things positive. So if something good has happened to you this week, or you have an uplifting story, that sort of thing, I thought it would be great to have a place where we can just bring some cheer to the world, or at the very least have our own little corner of positivity. There is a link to the Discord channel in the description as well, so please try that out and come and have a chat. Also, a very big thank you to Budget Seeds for offering my UK listeners 10% off with them. Just use my code SO'Neill10 to get your discount, and yes, there is a link in the description. That's budgetseeds.co.uk, and use the code SO'Neill10 for your 10% off, or click the link. It couldn't be simpler. They're always doing fantastic deals, and you'll often get packets of seeds starting at just 15 pence. I'm going to have to put a new order in with them very, very soon, because I've been going through my seeds. There's a couple of things I've missed out completely, so I will be using them. So I encourage you to head over to budgetseeds.co.uk and get your 10% off with my code SO'Neill10. And now that we have everything all shipshape and taken care of, it's time to take a look at our plant of the week. Not a tree this week. So make sure you have a coffee or something equally essential. Get comfortable, and we'll take a look into the wonders of the world of sage. When you think of sage, what comes to mind? Is it the word given to someone wise and knowledgeable? Is it a fragrant plant that's used as part of the stuffing for a Sunday roast? Or is it something more? I ask because our hero this week, Sage, has an ancient story, one filled with healing, mystery, ritual, and even a touch of the supernatural. The sage I'm talking about this week is the common sage, or Salvia officinalis, which comes from the Latin word salvare, meaning to save or to heal. And that sets the tone straight away, doesn't it? The ancient Greeks and Romans held sage in very high regard. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, as he is called, believed it could treat everything from snake bites to memory loss, and Roman soldiers carried it into battle as a remedy for wounds. To the Romans, sage was associated with the god Jupiter, and they believed it could help with memory and to quicken the senses. Throughout the Med at that time, sage was associated with immortality, and they believed chewing the herb would help to improve mental capacity as well. In fact, both the Romans and Egyptians preserved meat using sage, and around this time, people would use sage to cover rotten meat, both to help protect themselves and cover the smell, which may be why it's so commonly used with roasting meat now. In her book, Plant Lore and Legend, Ruth Binney says, and I quote, "Sage, whose common name is synonymous with wisdom, works by preventing the breakdown in the body of the substance acetylcholine, which is known to be essential to effective memory storage." End quote. Now, I don't know about you, but I find it amazing that people like the Romans had these beliefs way back about plants, being used for certain things, and now we have scientific evidence to show they were right. I mean, like sage being antibacterial, for example, but how did they know? How could they find out all this stuff at that time? I mean, don't get me wrong, I think, some of the stuff they believed in was nuts, but when it comes to plants, they really were onto something. When we move on to the Middle Ages, there's a lovely saying concerning sage, and it says, "Why should a man die whilst sage grows in his garden?" The thing is, this wasn't just poetic. It reflected a real belief. Monks in medieval monasteries carefully cultivated sage in their herb gardens. They used it in all sorts of ways, including to clean their bodies and whiten their teeth. It was thought to prolong life, strengthen memory, and again enhance wisdom. In fact, in some European traditions, it was believed that the health of your sage plant reflected the health of your household. If it began to wither, it was a bad omen. One curious bit of folklore says that your sage plant should never be planted for yourself. It must be planted by someone else to bring you good fortune. And then there's the burning of the sage, something that's gained popularity in recent years as well, and it's often called smudging. It's supposed to cleanse an area of negativity, and you'll often see people doing it on the supernatural shows where they claim it will get rid of evil spirits and the like. I actually found a website called magicalspot.com, and there it gives a few ideas about the uses of sage, and I'm quoting these from the site, and I'll link to them in the description too if you want to go and have a read of the whole thing. So you can include it in money sachets for prosperity. They say throw a pinch of dried sage in your abundance bag or add it to a success spell for wisdom in making financial decisions. Surround a blue or white candle with dried sage leaves, then burn it to heal frazzled emotions and spiritual disquiet. Or you can burn it during funeral and memorial rites. Sage apparently facilitates healthy grief and bonding with the spirits of those who passed on. Sage is believed to assist with grief, especially during funerals or remembrance ceremonies, helping to alleviate the sorrow of loss. Or you could place a sage sachet in your pillow to drive away nightmares. They say sage has a protective quality that is specific to mental disturbances such as nightmares. And the last one I'll mention from this site is this. To make a wish, you can write it on a sage leaf, sleep with it under your pillow for 3 days, and then bury it. So now let's have a quick look at some of the superstition about sage. In English folklore, it was said that your sage would only thrive if your household was thriving, a kind of magical garden mirror. If the plant began to fade, it meant trouble was brewing. Illness, bad luck, maybe just a quarrel, but something was coming. In Margaret Baker's book, Discovering the Folklore of Plants, she quotes an old saying about sage. If the sage bush thrives and grows, the master's not master, and he knows. She goes on to say that husbands would destroy flourishing sage bushes to avoid becoming the laughingstock of the neighbours, because if the sage bush was thriving, it meant the woman was in charge. And if the garden did have flourishing sage bushes, then only girls would be born to that household. Perhaps that was another reason that the menfolk of the time saw fit to rip out these sage bushes from their gardens. Another belief was that if you ate sage in May, you would live forever. Alternatively, you could eat 7 leaves on 7 mornings for breakfast, and that would have the same effect. Now, of course, we can't forget sage in the kitchen, and aside from its magical past, sage has been used for centuries in herbal medicine and home cooking as well. Tea made from sage leaves has long been believed to help soothe sore throats, ease digestion and calm the nerves. I think one of the most well-known uses for sage these days is to help with the hot flushes of perimenopause and menopause. In Italy, sage was often called the herb of immortality. There's that link again. And it was often paired with fatty meats to aid digestion. A folk remedy from Wales involved mixing sage with butter and honey as a treatment for colds and coughs. Don't know if I fancy that one much, to be honest. And in Old English households, a sage vinegar was brewed to disinfect wounds or be used as a household cleaner, which when you think about it with all these antibacterial and antimicrobial properties of sage, they were ahead of their time. And I'm going to ask again, how did they know this? It just blows my mind. I came across a website called plantlore.com. I've used it a couple of times before in this season, and it's a lovely site for all these sorts of topics. And when it comes to sage, some of the uses there include sage tea being used in the First World War for headaches. They would wash the leaves well and boil them for 10 to 15 minutes and leave it to cool, and apparently it didn't taste too bad and was very effective. If you wash and crush a sage leaf, according to this website, and put it on mouth ulcers like a little poultice, it will ease the pain, disinfect it and soothe, and very quickly it will all heal up. And if you remove the vein of the sage leaf, you can use it in your mouth to relieve sore gums. If you put it between like dentures and your gum, that apparently takes the pain away as well if you're having irritation with false teeth. Leaves steeped in water and then used as a gargle will relieve sore throats. And it also goes on to describe how people have used sage to clean their teeth, deal with arthritis, and even help a young mother trying to wean her baby. It's well worth checking that site out. It seems to get a lot of like anecdotes and stories and wisdom from people over whatever time period they use, I don't know, but there's lots of different inputs from people. It's very interesting. So, how can we bring a bit of sage wisdom into our modern lives? If you're growing sage in a garden, on a balcony, or even on a sunny windowsill, you're carrying on an ancient tradition. It's fairly easy to grow. It loves well-drained soil, and those grey-green leaves are just lovely to brush your fingers over and you get that scent. You might dry a few sprigs and hang them in your kitchen, not just for cooking, but just as a little nod to its protective past. Why not try a simple sage tea? Or give the old herbal vinegar a go. Add a few dried sage leaves to your bath for a soothing soak. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you're facing a big decision, you'll go out to the garden, run your fingers through your sage plant, take a breath, and see what your intuition says. After all, sage is the herb of wisdom. So that's it for today's herbal journey. I hope you've enjoyed exploring the folklore and uses of sage, from ancient wisdom to modern day rituals. But don't forget, if you've got a sage growing in your garden or a sage story of your own, tell me about it. You can leave a comment, email me, or even come over to the new Discord channel. I would love to see you there. So that just leaves me to say thank you for spending some of your precious time with me. I really do appreciate it. I'll be back next week with another fascinating folklore episode, but until then, as always, you take care of your wee self.